Welcome back, everybody, to The Land Between the Meadows, Kentucky History Podcast. We are going to get right into our second episode and our discussion about John C.C. Mayo. I hope you enjoy. So, he's teaching. He's here teaching school, and he's making no money, really. I mean, I think it's like $40 or something for 5 months. You know, I mean, that's not a lot of money. And he is going around, of course. He starts a business to buy timber and real estate, but he's beginning to get enough money to start buying mineral rights. But at this time,
he used his teacher's pay to afford it.
And at this time, I mean, you go around Eastern Kentucky this time, I mean, there's literally coal popping out of the ground. Yeah. I mean, that's how abundant it is. And
they call them groundhog mines. You can go with a pick and just pick
it right out. Yep.
Take it to your house, a wheelbarrow.
And like we saw journals, we've talked about Thomas Walker and Christopher Gant, who was early people in the area, and they mentioned the outcroppings as well. But at this time, Eastern Kentucky, we've talked about it, did not have a lot of coal being mined.
No.
You know, there's a little bit in the Big Sandy. Peach Orchard was one. But the big thing is transportation and fear. And we'll get into that a little bit here in a second. But anyway, Mayo starts buying land in the 1880s, and he's buying a lot of land. And
making money. He's buying it and selling it.
And people say that he did this unfairly and took advantage of the people around. But he actually, at some point, everybody who lived in the town of Paintsville, he at one point had paid them for some sort of job. The whole, and I mean, we're talking a small population, but at some point he was paying people jobs and so forth. But he starts his first business with a guy named Turner and a guy named Castle, and we won't really get too much into them. But he's buying up land. Those two guys, of course, had some pull and were part of the infantry and was a preacher, a minister. One was a doctor. And they start a company, and he starts buying up land, but he starts buying it really aggressively, and one of the guys bails out. And he's like, whoa, you're getting too aggressive, I'm out, and so forth. But we just mentioned this, the railroad still had not come through. The governor at the time was Leslie, and he had not approved, did not sign off for them to build a railroad or anything such. So that's the hurdle that Mayo has to set for himself. I got to get the railroad here. And then things can change.
So let me guess, Mayo gets involved in politics.
Bingo. He gets deep into
gubernatorial politics.
Now, say by 1890, I think he had about 30,000 acres. And I mean, that's pretty sizable.
That is.
Definitely if you think of how many.
For an elementary school teacher.
For an elementary school teacher, yes. So he's laying the groundwork. And things are starting to kind of go. He sells some of his land. Well, let me back up a little bit, because I talked about fear in being a thing, and I'm going to read a few excerpts here from the book, because they tell us about some of the fear that I want to get at, because there's two excerpts here I want to read, and so in the 1890s, this is written by William T Wright. The story goes, the whole of the southeastern part of the state was a barren wilderness with little and varying knowledge of the law, although they knew how to deal squarely man to man. So the area was described as distant, detached, unknown, the feudest guarded every mountain path, outlawry mocked at order, a bloody mist overhung every valley, and ignorance rested like a pall over the mountains. This was an excerpt of
lovely place.
Yeah, lovely place.
Every pass has got a thug. Don't be bright. Don't look up. Don't have good feelings towards anything. We'll straighten you out.
Ignorance rested over the mountains.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, that was one person's take.
We're ignorant and we're proud of it.
That was one person's take. Another person, Wendell Berry. He has a little excerpt here. And of course, Wendell Berry is a little older than this, or a little younger than this fella. The first person, which was John Wright.
John Wright.
Yeah.
William T.
In looking at Eastern Kentucky, he saw as exploited, depressed, uglified, newly ruined. He expressed the following: the sad truth is that the Cumberlands were far nearer civilization in 1890 than they are today. So take that for a second then.
What's that mean?
In the valley and on the slopes where industry has done its worst, a land that resembles the battlefield of
Armageddon.
Yeah. So I mean, look back. Wendell Berry actually said that it was more civilized, 100 years ago than it was now. But I mean, that's two different perspectives, of course.
Yeah, and Wendell Berry, I think in all rights would probably not be classified as an industrialist. He didn't like the coming of the coal and the pollution and the leveling of the mountains and so forth. He doesn't like it today.
Yeah.
So he was a kind of he was for small farms, kind of like Thomas Jefferson, and family farms and not for industrialization.
And I would say
exploitation of.
I would say that's his point. In 1880, 1890, none of that was happening.
No.
But today, after you go back and like all this mountaintop removal, all this, you could say the oppression of Eastern Kentucky people, that is probably a little bit better back in 1890 than it was now, because none of this stuff had happened yet.
That's right.
Not the big. We still got about 10 more years till Mayo gets things going.
There's a lot of problems going on though that you're relating because there wasn't the industrialization, but ignorance guarded every pass, and there was a culture of non-commercialism and of non-development, non-industrialization. Don't want change. Want everything to be the same. So that prevailed, and that's not a good environment, as we talked about, for stoking seeds of success. That we're down and out, and we like it down here, and don't come around, don't bother us. I mean, my kin, we fit. And the woods are full of them. Yeah, they are.
So the big thing that Mayo, I guess, is having is the risk versus reward. No one wants to go into Eastern Kentucky because they're going to have to deal with that geography as well.
Who you related to? You ain't related to my kin. Get on out of here, boy.
Yeah, and they don't want to have to deal with that. So the reward or the payment award is not worth doing all this kind of...
I told you before when I first started teaching school 36 years ago, I went to Casey County, and I still have a letter in my possession. I applied to teach in Casey County. There's a little school down there in the hills in the Knobs. I wanted to teach at a rural school. And the superintendent wrote me a letter and said, if you're not related to anybody that teaches in the school system or anybody in this county, we're not interested in you.
Yeah, wow.
You don't even bother to apply. It's just like, if you ain't kin, forget it. We don't want you here. Yeah. And that was Casey County, Kentucky.
Yeah, that's
36 years ago.
Yeah, wow. That's pretty interesting. It's
a leftover, it creeped in from that same mentality.
Yeah.
And it's still there today.
Yeah. So Mayo realizes, though, that he needs to start buying the mineral rights, and this is where things are going to get a little tricky, and he's going to go negotiate with these farmers, and which is hard. They're used to trading crops. I trade you 2 hogs for whatever it may be, and he has to kind of negotiate that, and he has to go up to him. You got to talk to local gossip, talk about the neighbors, talk about corn, hogs. You got to go through all this before he can convince them to sell out.
Had to prove that he's one of them.
And that was an advantage. That was definitely an advantage that he had over other people that may have been trying to do that. But he also knew about he also knew that not all these farmers technically legally own their land as far as back in the Revolutionary War. A lot of Revolutionary War grants were done, and some of those people never even showed up. So then these people, came,
just settled,
squatted, and then no one else ever showed up. They sat there for 100 years, and somebody comes in and says, "Well, my great grandpappy got a land grant for this land. It ain't yours." Well, what do you mean it ain't? My family's been here for 100 years.
I got hogs down there.
Yeah. We've been raising corn and crops and everything else for years. This is our land. And that became a big problem. There was a bunch of lawsuits and stuff settled, eventually came up saying that Mayo didn't rightfully buy that land. However, the courts did end up settling in Mayo's favor, saying, these people have been living there. No one claimed them. You can't claim, I don't know what the papers,
After you live on it long enough without any resistance, it becomes your land.
Yeah. So, again, you brought this up about Mayo, and he traveled a lot, and not with a car. They're talking about horseback, riding around to these places, up in this holler, and then going to this holler, and asking about buying land and
buying rights, mineral rights.
Mineral rights, yeah, and it wasn't an easy process. He would have to go in. It'd be like a week. Stay a week with these people and talk to them, and so forth.
And a lot of them were illiterate, couldn't read or write, and he was having them sign deeds and agreements that they might not have completely understood. And he probably took advantage of that. Maybe
he did. He took advantage of the situation because of his his knowledge, I guess. And the night comes to the Cumberland, written by Harry Cottle.
Yes.
He says that one of a thing that Mayo had on one side of the table said an astute trader, more often than not a graduate of a fine college, and a man experienced in the larger business world. Across the table said a man and a woman out of a different age, unable to read the instruments or able to read it only with much uncertainty. The sellers relied upon the agent for an explanation of its contents. So you were coming in with these people that couldn't read, and saying, "Hey, here's this deed."
They trust people, so
here's this deed.
I'm related to your kin. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. You can trust me. I'm just like you, man. Signed on the dotted line.
It ain't no biggie. You got these rights. So you can debate if that was right or wrong. I kind of feel like it was pretty shady.
I do too.
To do that. But he bought, on the other side of it, he did buy the land for more than it was worth. And he even, paid, which, I shouldn't say it like that. He bought the land for more than what they realized it was worth.
Right.
Yeah, that would be a better way to say it.
Yes, very much.
Because he bought it for like 50 cents an acre. Sometimes he bought it $1 an acre. Sometimes he would even say, "Hey, I'll give you $5 or $7 more after this happens," or whatever. And at the time, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, but he was buying pennies on the dollar. Was what it was worth, and he knew it.
Yeah.
I'll do you a favor.
Yeah.
I'll take your Cadillac off of you.
So he keeps on buying up the land, and he's about 26 years old when all this is going on, and he is in massive amount of debt. But he gets his first break when the Merritt brothers come in and pay for some land, or pay for 10,000 acres for $16 an acre, which, at the time, this is big money. And they actually give him $60,000 in cash, but $100,000 in notes, and so forth. And again, he's still trying to sell Kentucky coal. And so in the not the Broadhead Fair, the World's Fair
in Chicago. Right?
Yep, in 1893.
Yep.
They have a big display, and I can't confirm that Mayo was there, but it would be wise to assume that he had something to do with it. And the whole thing is to sell Kentucky coal. Come to Kentucky, get this coal. We got a whole bunch of it.
Very successful.
And he's able to kind of get into, some talk with some people there at that point.
Some investors.
And
they bought 25% of his corporation in cash, and that helped him out.
Yeah, and this is all going great, but then also in 1983, the stock 1893, the stock market crashed, or the fear, and this sort of thing happens. The notes, he got that 100,000 note, useless now. But guess what Mayo still does? Keeps on buying land. Doesn't stop for a moment. Keeps on buying more and more land. He actually extends over into some other counties that he's not done so yet.
He goes to Virginia, doesn't he?
Goes to Virginia, West Virginia.
Southwest Virginia.
Starts buying up land there as well. But still, his problem is trains. There's no trains coming. You can only sell so much downriver, and that. And again, he is working himself to death, traveling and so forth. And he actually goes to where he gets real sick. And he goes to, while he's sick, he's at this place called the Alger House. And if you remember our cold camp discussions. Do you remember the camp or the town that it was in?
No.
No. Well, it was
Elkhorn?
No. Thelka.
Falca.
Yeah. However, guess what? We were wrong with that.
Falca.
It was not. It's not Thelka. It's Thelky.
Oh, Falca.
Yeah, we did not. And the reason I bring that up is because he's at the Alky house, which is, I guess, is kind of like a motel this day. And Captain Green Meek is the person who runs it, but he meets his wife here. And Captain Meek has a barge that we talked about before that sails back, and he named it after his daughter. His daughter her name's Alice, but for whatever reason, he called her Alky. I don't know about your drinking, if he's a big drinker, and said, you're Alky because
alkaline soils,
So, as we mentioned before, whenever he named the boat after her and called it Alky, and then whenever they made the sign, the artist
pleasure boat
put the Alky beside it, and it became Thalky, and so it wasn't Thelka, it was Thalky. That's how that came about. Mayo is at this hotel, or at this guy, the house or the hotel, whatever you want to, the Alger house, for a long time. Like, he's sick, and he was actually courting another lady. I can't think of what this lady's name was right off the top of my head. Carla Stewart, who was a judge's daughter. So again, a political connection. However, their relationship went cold, and so forth. But there's a bit of rumor that
I've been there.
Alky had a little bit of hand in this.
You either choose me over that dog, or you're out of here. I'll choose the dog, man.
But anyway, the telegraph operator.
Feel for him.
The telegram operator was Alky, or Jane, if you want to call her by that name. That'd be a little better.
I don't know.
But anyway, so this Clara Stewart would be sending messages to John through telegraph, whatever, and Alky would just get rid of them, wouldn't deliver them. So the relationship goes cold, and Alky moves right in. That's
smell that money.
That's the saying. That's the rumor, I should say, that how it became. But Alky, I mean, as a woman for our time, was very more active. Like, she was listed on some of Mayo's companies as being a part of it. The big thing that is the most interesting is on these trips to buy land, she would sometimes accompany Mayo or accompany like one of his employees to go buy these lands, and she would be the money carrier. And at one time, she had $10,000 of gold on horseback.
Wow.
Now you're thinking, well, how in the world did she have? He had went and got a specially made dress, and inside the dress was stitchings that would have gold coins in it.
Wow.
And she that was the way of keeping the gold safe, I guess.
Strip down, Alky.
But there's gold on it.
Let's see what you got.
Oh yeah, $20 gold pieces would be hidden and concealed within the dress, which is pretty interesting. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Pretty smart, really.
Yeah. Side note: do you know what if you got charged with a breach of peace, what that would mean?
Breach of peace, causing trouble. I mean,
causing trouble. Yeah, and
sure.
Ironically enough, old John Mayo caused trouble at times and did get some fines for breach of peace. I doesn't really know what, or
arguing.
Probably, something.
You give me your land, or we'll kill your hogs before fall. So he's met her month.
So he's met his wife, and that's really
Alky.
and she probably deserves a story in her own. Definitely after he dies, she's got some interesting things, but we won't get into that today. And we'll probably best go ahead and kind of wrap this up a little bit. And this is definitely going to be a two-parter because John C. I mean, he's an interesting fella. He's conflicted in many aspects. Have you swayed any, Mr. Pope? Are you still?
I've swayed back and forth a little bit. I feel like I understand it. But I'll tell you what, to denounce Mayo and his operation and the way he did things, you would have to denounce corporations today and men of money today in every aspect. I mean, because he didn't do anything that people are doing today everywhere, you know, and ripping people off. No, taking
For the
advantage
gain,
of them for their own personal gain, whether it's laborers who they're not paying enough or whether it's, taking advantage of people that don't understand what's going on. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's we don't live, in a peaceful kingdom, in heaven. We live with greed.
Which drives a lot of
incest.
Everybody's actions is.
It really is, we're freaking out over money.
Motivated by greed.
Oh gosh, and a complexity of life, and to say, well, this guy's bad, you already mentioned that almost everybody in Paintsville at one time had received benefits from him one way or the other through employment or other things. So he is stirring the pot. I think when people amass a lot of wealth at the cost of other people, that you got to look at it as not being right. I want to say, what did he do to give back to all these people? Did he build hospitals? Did he build schools for free? What did he do with his money? I mean, did he just accumulate
massive amounts of wealth?
Yeah, 10 million, I understand,
Yeah. Well,
which is compatible today with over 500 million in the same inflationary. Over 513 or 516 million dollars, 510 million.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And we'll get a little more. I mean, the Industrial Revolution.
What do you think? You're from Eastern Kentucky. These are your kin. These cheating. They're your kin.
I don't. After I'd read to this point in the book, and he still got half his. I'll say half his life. He's still got a substantial amount of his life left before to talk about. But at the point, I still feel the same that I would before. As far as I feel like he set up a lot of the problems that occurred in Eastern Kentucky. And now if he was intentional about that, I don't think necessarily he was intentionally saying, "Hey, I'm going to screw everybody over."
Well,
but that kind of, I think, was the side effect.
I think the people that criticize that broad form deed, among other things, is they didn't know what they were signing, and they signed away their land and value to somebody else who just came in and just became extremely wealthy, raped the land, destroyed the environment, just to get money, and left them, stand on the side of the road.
Yep.
And that's not right.
No,
but obviously he's a hard worker.
Well,
but you can be a hard worker in evil deals.
Yeah, that doesn't mean just because you work hard.
He went all over the place. He rode his horse Chicago, and this, that, and the other, man. He rode it, and every night you'd find him in some holler, cheating somebody. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't, it's capitalism.
It is.
Capitalism is an ugly thing.
It's
a sinful thing,
What
did Jesus say? It's easier to go through the eye of the needle than it is to...
It's easier for a rich man to go, or it's easier for you to go through a camel. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle as opposed to a rich man to get into heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
There you go. We go back to our Christian faith. I understand that the eye of the needle was a place. It's not really a needle. You can tell me more about that. So I always took it literally.
Well, I mean if we want to talk about Jesus is saying, there's a lot of figurative and literal value.
There was a place.
Yeah.
The needle.
The
eye of the needle.
We need to find out more about that. But
you have to bring a theologian in.
Yeah. But
I'm sure the listening audience can help us out. Yeah.
But this book is called.
It meant the same thing.
The Cumberland Capitalist. I mean, that's what he was known as, and the more I read, as I read the book, you have this thing, and we'll get into more of that a little bit next time because there's just a lot to kind of consider when you're looking at him and what he did. But
this reminds me of something. There's a woman that I used to know. She's written some books that are fantastic. I understand her name was Kilmer.
Yes.
And she said one time, just imagine if Columbus, when he came back from his first trip to America, would have brought Queen Elizabeth, I guess it was, a feather.
Oh,
said,
yeah.
This is America, instead of slaves and gold, and said, this is the wealth of America. How that would have set a different tone.
Oh, yes.
And so here's John Mayo,
and
coming down there and, ripping the coal and people off,
And
I mean, what if he said, "Why don't we, turn this into a national park, and the beauty and preserve it all rather than strip it all?"
Well,
what's that worth?
Oh yeah,
What is it worth to
different.
destroy?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a whole different mentality,
And that's not.
It's kind of like what we're doing today. We're able to cut our forests and national parks and mine for gold and build roads in areas and drill for oil in Alaska, and it's about money, man.
Yeah.
Money drives it. Politics too.
Yeah, and that's
fills their pockets with gold, silver.
That's what my conflict with John C.C. Mayo is. You want to find that good underlying thing.
I know.
And it's very hard to find.
It really is.
Something just because of what happened afterwards. Even after he died, he what he had set in place really took a toll on people and the area.
I think so.
And so forth. And that's
so you haven't convinced me.
I probably won't. No, I don't think I will.
I don't think you will.
It didn't convince me. I'm trying to be the devil's advocate here.
I know you're trying.
We'll end it with that, I guess. Yeah. So thanks for listening. Yeah. I know it's been a long time, and we're very happy to be back and seeing people instead of just staring at the wall.
That's right.
Or the man in the mirror.
That's right. That's scary.
Yeah. So if you want to connect to us at KY History Pod on Facebook or Twitter, email us thelandbetweenthemayo@gmail.com. We will be back to wrap up John C.C. Mayo here in the next week or so. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.